All right, so we have been playing with our logos in Photoshop and outputting them for web use. But now I want to show you how to make files print ready. So let's say that I really liked this black and white logo. And I kept it as an EPS file. But then I also wanted to bring in my black line logo. And I just want to make a beautiful digital print of it. You know, that's bigger than you usually see logos. And so I have my color version, and then I have my black over the top of it. And on my black version, the problem is when I have it on a black background, I have a little bit of offset from the color, but not enough to really make it pop. So what I might decide is to give it a separate outer glow offset, but really shrink that down, make it subtle. You know, just really slight. Maybe like that. And I can position it so I have a drop shadow on the color. Right? Just so it looks really clean and nice, even on a black background. Right? So once I have something that I like, I could try a drop shadow here too. You can even try drop shadows that are a color. So right now it's a gray drop shadow, but I could do a blue, kind of a purplish. And you can play with the size of it. You know, you can play with how extreme it is, how far it is, how sharp it is. All of these are options you have as long as you have an EPS file. So if I liked that, and I thought, okay, that's what I want to make sure it's versatile, and I wouldn't want to print it on a black background, right? So how would it look? That's how it would look on like a black t-shirt. This is how it would look on a gray t-shirt. That's nice. And this is how it would look on a white t-shirt. So I'm ready to print it, and I'm going to print it with a white background because we use photo printers. So we don't want to print flat color unless absolutely necessary, because our printers aren't made for that. Our printers are made for detailed gradations, right? So the first thing I need to do is I need to check the image size of it. And I go to my largest full res image. And if you want details of this, simply go into the class page. Let me log into it quick. And we're going to go into the class Dropbox, which is all under links. And I don't want to show you that on the video because I don't want to give people that have access to this public channel that information. But if you go under links, you'll see what the Dropbox password and login are for our class. And once you're signed in, you go to Files. And these are our shared resources, right? You're going to go to the folder that says Digital Art Class Files, and the very first folder is Flattened Tiff Files to Print. And the very first document in there tells you how to make your images print ready, right? So this video is going to tell you, but this is always a good place to check as well. It's just a series of steps. So first, open your finished PSD version of your chosen assignment in Photoshop. And I've just brought this into Photoshop. Let's say it's ready to print. What's the next step? I'm going to flatten the image, right? I've already saved it, let's say. So I'll save your Photoshop file first. So this is what I'll call print test, Carl, fall 2017, to the desktop. Okay, now I want to flatten the image because you don't want to print with a lot of layers. That just increases the memory needlessly. So I go to Layer, Flatten Image. And you want to discard any hidden layers, especially true for your compositing projects. Okay, what's next? I want to go to Image Size, and I want to change the physical dimensions of my image to fit comfortably within the matte opening I intend to use. So the most standard ones, I can have an 8 by 10 opening, or I can have an 11 by 14 opening. So if I go to image, image size, I can change the physical dimensions here to fit my mat opening. And I'm going to uncheck resample so that I keep my original pixels. So let's change this from being an 11 by 14 print to being an 8 by 10 print. Right? Notice that because I had resample unchecked, it automatically upped my resolution, which is good, which means this same Photoshop file can print up to 11 by 14. Could even print bigger, because as long as we print above 300, we're at a standard minimum resolution for professional printing. I will allow you to print anything from 240 pixels per inch up, because it will look good with our printing technology. But anything below 240 pixels per inch at the physical dimensions you want will not look good. And you can print that somewhere else. But I don't want to waste our paper on that. So once you have the image dimensions set, make sure that the resolution ideally is between 300 and 350. Anything higher than 350 is just wasting memory space. But I'm not going to force it down when it's like 500, because that allows me to print it larger. But if it gets above 500, then we are probably wasting memory space and just causing the print to take too long. Then I want to save the flattened and resized file as a Tiff format. So this is a new format. It's what we call an archive format. And when it asks about compression, we want to make sure that LZW compression is turned on. So compression is like rounding numbers. So when I save this, I say save as, and I'm going to put PR in front, capital PR. That tells me that this is now print ready. And I'm going to save it not as a Photoshop document, but as a Tiff document. Make sure it's flattened first. And then I hit save, and it will ask me, do I want to compress it? Well, the reason we use Tiff for our print files as an archive format is it can be opened by other programs. So let's say you take it to Costco. They're not going to open it in Photoshop. They're going to open it in just a regular media viewer. Tiff can be opened that way. We also use it because it does not lose any data. It is not an online format. So it doesn't lose data as it gets resaved and changed. But we can still compress it, which means make its memory take up less space. And for that, we use this amazing miracle of a compression for images called LZW. And LZW is most commonly used with the Tiff format. So you always want it. LZW is a lossless compression format. So it makes your file smaller without ever losing any quality. It just takes a little bit longer for it to open and for it to save. Okay, so now on my desktop, I've got my print ready file. And it will open in preview instead of Photoshop, right? I can also open it in Photoshop. Let's go back to our document. What's the next step? Upload your print ready Tiff file to the appropriate folder in the class Dropbox account. So if you go back to the Dropbox account, you're going to see that in this flattened Tiff files to print, you all have a folder. And I have my own. Click on that folder, and then you can simply drag and drop your print ready file. That's why I labeled them PR. I'll mark it blue. Your print ready file into your folder. Your folder won't be as busy as mine. Okay. What's great about the class Dropbox is this, by doing this through the Dropbox website, you are actually downloading them to our print computers. So you will never need to download your file again. We'll just print it right from the Dropbox, which is housed on our printing computers. And as long as you've sized them correctly, I'll help you with the print, but your print will be perfect. It will be the right size. It will be the great resolution. It will fit your mats. And that's all there is to it, to making something print ready. So let's make some others print ready from this semester. So I've got my color logo. What if I want to do my landscape? Let's go to assignment 1. I open up my Photoshop file, right? Because that's going to be the highest resolution. And these landscapes we designed at 11 by 14 or larger, right? At 350 pixels per inch. So we can print these really large if we want. So I want this to fit into an 11 by 14 opening mat. But the issue is my landscape might not be the exact proportion of 11 by 14 inches. So what's the first thing I do? If I go back to the instructions, right? I have to first flatten the image. It's what I want. You can turn layers on and off, but once you're ready to print, you flatten the image. Okay? Then I go to resize the image under image size. And here, my image is 20 inches by 14 by 350. I uncheck resample so that I keep my original pixels, but I say I want this to print within an 11 by 14 inch mat. So let's see, if I put 14 in, my resolution's still great, but my height is only 9.7 inches. So that doesn't work, right? So why does that not work? Well, if I then make the canvas size, this is just to show you, if I make the canvas size 11 by 14, which is the opening for the mat, it will frame like this. This black would be the mat. And my image would be like a widescreen aspect ratio, DVD. It would have letterboxing. It would have a white stripe at the top and the bottom. And that looks kind of amateurish, right? So instead, I actually want to make its proportions less than 14, fewer inches than 14, so that it can have white all the way around it. So let me go to image size. Again, I have resample unchecked, so I'm not hurting my image at all. And I'm going to put in 13 inches instead. Now, if I go to image canvas size, and I say 11 by 14, which is my mat opening, and actually the mat openings are closer to, they're always about half an inch under. So the mat opening is actually 10.5 inches by 13.5 inches, if it's a pre-cut mat. Then my print will look like this inside the mat. And that just looks a lot more professional. Do you guys agree? So that's called floating it, right? And if your image isn't exactly the proportions of the mat opening, float your image. You have a little bit of white showing on all sides. Okay, once it's like that, I'm ready for the next step, which is to flatten and resize, or save the resized image as a TIFF format. So File, Save As. Remember, this is important. I need to change the name and save it as a TIFF file to the desktop. I don't want to accidentally overwrite my assignment 1 PSD file, because this has already been flattened, and I would lose all of the ability to work on it then. That's why, that's another reason I always put the PR in there, even though it's not in the directions. It's just a way of making sure it saves as a separate file. Save it as a TIFF to the desktop. Always have LZW turned on. All the other defaults you can leave. Okay, now I have my second print ready file. I can mark it blue, and I can add that in to my Dropbox. So it's really simple. Once you're logged in, you go to Files, you go to Digital Art Class Files, and then you go to Flatten TIFF Files to print. And you all have, for this semester, you all have your own folder there. You click on your folder, and then you just drag and drop your files in. And it will upload. Okay, now let's do one that doesn't have a boundary. Let's do my creature assignment. I want to use it for the monster project, let's say, or the monster exhibit that's coming up, middle of November. So assignment 2. And I'm going to use my Photoshop file, which got moved. So there it is. I need to move that back to my assignment 2 folder. So I have my Photoshop file. Here I still have to flatten it. Flattened images will never have the grid. So if you say Layer, Flatten Image, it will fill up any empty space with white. Why is that important? Well, especially for your creature, you want to make sure the edges are what you want, right? That there isn't any floating light-colored debris, like around his foot here. And if there is, I can paint that in with a white paint or even a white eraser. as long as I have the defaults turned on, because now it's flattened.